Welcome to B&W Insights. I am your host, Mark Seifert, and today we have a great episode. I am super excited. Our guest today has been with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California for the last 13 and a half years. She's the Director of Water Treatment and Operation, oversees, what I heard yesterday, over 900 employees. She was the Section Chair of California, the Vice President, and now is the President-Elect of the American Water Works Association. Welcome, Heather Collins.
Good morning or good afternoon, Mark. How are you?
Good. I think we're afternoon now. It's been some hours. So, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's an honor and I'm sure a privilege to be the President-Elect of the AWWA. You know, how did you first get started in the AWWA?
Oh gosh, we're going back a couple decades now, Mark. I'm aging myself, but actually when I started working in water in college, I think I told the story yesterday that I found my way into water in an unconventional way, not through somebody that I knew, but I was looking for a summer internship in college. Aerospace was not cutting it, was not offering jobs, and there was a water district that I started working for. So when you work in a water district, there are publications that lay around.
Yeah.
So I'm picking those up and I'm looking at these and I see a trend that they're from the American Water Works Association.
Yeah.
And then I went to another internship at Metropolitan, actually, who I work for today. And I'm meeting people that are writing the articles that are being placed into these publications.
That's cool.
So I'm like, okay, this is now the organization that I need to figure out and align myself with. So got involved, started asking some people, how do I get involved? So they led me to different things. I went to my first annual convention, met some folks from the DC office, and they said, okay, here's some opportunities. I was led to a session about how to get involved. And I ended up being on an advisory board for AWWA as a young professional.
That's a pretty cool honor.
It was really cool. So that was one of my first introductions to volunteer leadership, and then getting involved with my section as well. So that's how I kind of found it in the first place.
At what point did you know that I want to make that move to the national level?
Oh gosh, I think when, seeing who's in the water business and who were the, I'll call them the matriarch folks, right? Those that are breaking the barriers, and I started meeting them and getting involved. I think I always had this vision when Katie McCain became the first woman president. I'm like, okay, we can do this. So she was really an inspiration and a mentor to me now. And so it was from her and then all the others that came after her. And when I became association director, that was my path. I knew I was going there around the time after I did the section leadership.
Right.
And I knew I was going to go and try my cards.
Try your hand?
Yep.
It's so cool to hear the story of how you weren't even in this field. And everybody I always talk to, 75% of the people I talk to say, I didn't know about this field. I stumbled into this field and I fell in love with it. And it's so cool to hear from the president-elect of our national organization and the AWWA. It's awesome to hear that you got into this field just like us. What do you look most forward to by the start of your presidency?
Oh gosh, I mean, a lot of it is paying it forward, right? So I kind of have those three pillars. One of them is to ensure that we're building and encouraging our young professionals to keep going. So I'm a champion for YP because I came from being a YP. And I know what they're kind of desiring and looking for, so I want to be able to connect them and help them make those connections and pave the way and celebrate what they're doing and bringing into the conversation all the ideas they have, because they are our future and we need to be working on that. And that kind of is a foundational thing for the second pillar, which is Water 2050, right? Because we're working on that. It takes a multi-year initiative to build and continue with that. So it's kind of in our cohort for the presidents that are coming. I mean, you can't do everything in 1 year.
No,
so you have to continually build.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that's been a continuous, ground base for us as a foundation, is that all of us kind of contribute to that and build it as much as we can in our year. And then also really what I'm excited about is building the workforce development aspect. we talk about the workforce, we talk about the needs, but it's creating those pathways and helping everybody understand and see. Like you said, we didn't know water was a thing. You have to start these pathways really early on in life.
Right.
We have so many different individuals from all over that they think, okay, what's the cool thing? And, GM says, hey, make water cool again. We're going to make water cool again. But we're also needing to show the pathways early on.
Absolutely.
Of you can do so many things in water. Water transcends all careers.
Right.
Whether you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, a chemist, a graphic artist, engineer. There's so many capacities of jobs in there that we have available. Right. Now, I don't think they're going to be replaced by AI in a couple of years,
No.
but to augment that. And so that's the exciting piece. Like, get them excited by it, but able to show them. So working cross-sector, there's so many intersects with other sectors that we really need to work on, because the skill sets, when I talk about there's all these different careers in water, they're all over all these sectors.
Right.
So we need to do a better job. We do a great job talking in our
own bubble.
role,
Yeah,
right?
but
we need to expand that out to the other sectors.
I talked to another a vendor earlier who said, they're bringing other disciplines in to get that outside look at our industry, because they're helping us solve problems we didn't know we even had.
Right.
And it's so good to bring, whether it's a business person or a doctor or, like you mentioned, a lawyer. Have them look at what we're doing to make sure they don't say, oh, this is pretty simple. You guys have been looking with your blinders on for many years. So your first time here at WaterCon, what's your initial thoughts?
Love the title. I don't know who came up with WaterCon, but it's the greatest title. It has a resonance with it. The people are so welcoming. Everyone is engaged. They're friendly. I mean, I talk to everybody. I say hi, but they're receptive back. They're not like looking at me like, why did she say hi to me? The topic base, there's so many great topics. I want to go to more sessions. I want to take them all in. So everything in the eye-catching graphics, how everything is set up, it's a really great program. I think a lot of the things that are offered that were new, especially with the committee roundtables and doing different things that are, added on from prior conferences, you have to add something new to keep it, but this is amazing. And I have a lot of distant relatives that are from Illinois. Right. So it's kind of nice to kind of come back in and see. Like this morning, there was a talk about Lake Villa and how they switched water supplies. My father-in-law lived in Lake Villa, so...
Oh, so you do have a connection.
Yeah, I have connections.
Awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah.
So, I mentioned in opening, working for the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Talk about your roles. Obviously, AWWA is not your main job. So talk about your roles and responsibilities working for the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California.
Sure. So my main job is water operations for Metropolitan. So operations in treatment. We work with our conveyance folks that bring the water in. Metropolitan has two main supplies of water, surface water supplies from the Colorado River Aqueduct, which we own and maintain, and also we're a state water contractor. So we bring water in for 19 million people through 26 direct agencies and in turn 330 retailers. So there's quite a large demand when you're working on planning, forecasting, moving water around. And then when we get the water, what I'm charged with is to ensure that whatever water we get through whatever agreements, pump-in programs, supplies, et cetera, that our treatment plants, we have 5 very large conventional ozonated treatment plants, can handle the spectrum and the swing, whether it be from a quality standpoint, a quantity standpoint, to ensure that those 19 million people in Southern California have a reliable supply of water at any time. So we all talk about having reliability and contingencies in supply. We're the wholesaler, so our job is even more paramount to make sure that things are ready and able to come online quickly. So we have to work a lot in standby modes and how fast we can bring things online and move water around. So it's a very dynamic, complex, and flexible system. So and that's what's so amazing. And one of the aspects too I mentioned that I've been working on our pure water program. That's another third supply for us that will bring a drought resilient supply that is taking through a partnership through a Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts, takes their wastewater supply. We run it through advanced treatment, and treat it and have that as another supply in the future for us, because we have droughts that are variable, that are more frequent. We are east of the San Andreas Fault, so we have to ensure against seismic interruption.
Right.
So it's an exciting program that will then become our 6th treatment plant.
That is, I mean, for the water nerd inside me, it's even cooler hearing it. You talk about it, but I hear 19 million people. That's impressive. That's really a large number. What is I'm sure you probably have this number off the top of your head, but what is the daily pumpage for 19 million people that you guys are? How much water are you guys moving?
So collectively, we can treat up to 2.3 billion gallons a day.
Wow.
But we are not flowing at that rate now. We're actually we're probably about a third of that. Okay. So we convey both raw water and treated water for our agencies. Some of the agencies downstream have their own treatment systems because they have their own portfolio for resiliency and redundancy. Okay. And then others, they have other local supplies too. So everybody has these portfolios that they're planning for, because obviously they're trying to containerize rates. They want to have local sources. They can certainly, though, we're the insurance company in the water, for Southern California. They can say, call us up, hey, we need, a lot of water
really
in an hour,
really
fast. And we can do that for them.
That's awesome.
So that's the reliability point that we have. And with that, some of the staff that I have they're not only working in the treatment plants, operating them, doing all the electrical, mechanical, and instrumentation control, but we also service that for all of the other appurtenances and pump stations. We don't have a lot of pumping because we're really gravity fed, but we're introducing some pump systems into our conveyance system for further flexibility. And that's kind of a rare thing, but we can take water all the way from, essentially, call it Palm Springs, and pump it all the way over to the ocean. Through the new supplies and drought mitigation measures that we're putting together.
That is awesome. Switching topics a little bit, obviously, everybody here at WaterCon and Backroom, our thoughts and prayers to everyone who was affected by the Los Angeles wildfires. Switching over to the water operations side of the wildfires, when, in your role, with your responsibilities, when did you find out that there was a wildfire? Is it right away? Is it once it gets to a certain size? When do they bring the water operators in?
So we have a very, very rigorous emergency response and planning group, not only in Metropolitan, but in Southern California. We are very involved in all of the local regions, regional planning centers and so forth, very integrated with law enforcement. So we know immediately when fires break out. We have an emergency management preparedness office. We have a system that we use internally for Metropolitan, and then we're also queued into, if it's a city, county, or unincorporated area, into the ICS system, incident command system, that are in those different areas. So when these fires, like the ones that happened in January, there were several dozen fires.
Right.
And when they start, we report on them. Our incident command folks at Metropolitan keep track. And we have a web EOC program that kind of tracks all the different things. We monitor if our facilities are impacted. If it's in a member agency service area, we're immediately contacting them to understand if they need assistance. Can we help in some way? Is there mutual assistance requests that are coming up through the ICS system and the emergency framework system? Right. So we know right when they start, and then we monitor them. And when it does come to a point of they're escalating, and you had a lot that, they got containerized, and we were monitoring the percent containment, which many of them took on many days. But the two big ones, the Palisades and the Eaton fires, the ones that had the most property damage and destruction and death, unfortunately, those happened, the majority of the damage happened really early and really fast, like within a 12-hour period.
Right.
And some people go, well, why did that happen? Why did that happen in water systems of modern times? How could it happen? And the closest thing I can help you describe it is, it was a time of Santa Ana winds. You get weather warnings, just as everybody else gets weather warnings for inclement weather, whether it be a storm or hurricane, So you get these red flag warnings. It's a seasonal event that we always have, Santa Ana winds. The winds change direction over the mountains and low different pressure systems and such. It dries things out tremendously. The humidity drops. And when you have a fire that starts, we were hindered by the grounding of aircraft, because the aircraft and the firefighting capacity is really key to making sure that that percent containment increases really fast. We had grounded aircraft, so it was then transferring from an air attack to a land effort.
Which takes time.
On the ground, time. What you had going on in the Palisades in a very, very hilly area, you had the just massive movement quickly, and people had to just abandon their cars in place on the roads. It blocked things, as you may have seen on the news. And in the hilly system, they left their hoses running and so forth, so you kind of dewatered the pressure zones.
Yeah.
And there's never a water system that you can design to combat these types of fires that occurred. I'll use an analogy that was written in the LA Times, where imagine this was a coffee shop and they serve 400 cups of coffee a day. Well, they came in and they wanted 4 million cups a day, like in the same time frame.
Right.
There's just no way that you could design for that type of excursion. And so it's just, you can't, and the rates to have that type of contingency would be tremendous. The other thing that we have going on is we're building, and we have put ourselves in these urban kind of forested boundaries that we really shouldn't be building in, with typical timber construction, which doesn't bode well in a fire. So that doesn't help. Then you have an overwhelming amount of resources that were tasked, and you didn't have any more resources. So in the aspect of the Eaton fire above the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, that area was overwhelmed by, they didn't have enough resources in response. Their evacuation notices came out way too late. The fire happened as people were turning in for the evening. They woke up in the morning, Phil's knocking on the door for Ray to get out, and Ray sees the fire literally 100 feet from him and has to grab his keys and go.
Yeah.
So that's the type of thing that we were experiencing. So not a typical fire response. One thing we did find, though, I'll offer is we practice emergency response preparedness. We run exercises with our agencies, with the county and the fire, and all of these entities to be prepared. And it's imperative that when those fires happen, so the EOCs and that structure, they're already set up.
Right.
And they're ready to go. And they have degrees of severity, kind of as you mentioned, as the fires get more severe, there's more asks, there's more requests. You have to follow that framework. You can't just say, oh, Mark, on the side, I know a guy that can get you, a generator. You need to work within the framework.
There's parameters.
Because that's the way to ensure that you get what you need in the time frame. You can't just rely on somebody saying, I know a guy, and the guy's going to come in, how many hours. So that's one thing, and we're learning lessons, after every incident.
And I assume after any time something like this happens, there's months of debriefs, and you're learning something new every time.
Correct.
How much infrastructure was affected? Did you guys lose pump stations? Did you lose reservoirs? Was a lot affected?
So you're talking about a couple different utilities. You have the City of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power over in the Palisades. You have the LA County Water Works, which is kind of in Malibu. Those were the homes you saw in the Pacific Ocean in the sand that were reduced to nothing. And then you have a number of water utilities that were above the Pasadena area through Foothill Municipal District and several of their retailers. So you had different agencies with different impacts. Obviously, a lot of loss of residences. You had impacts to reservoirs where you had old wood construction roofs that kind of burned into the reservoirs. They did lose power to a lot of pump stations. Power lines. Okay, we didn't talk about that so much yet, but power lines, both from Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and the other areas that feed through Southern California, Edison. You've heard about power lines running through and them taking down the circuits during the times of a wildfire. So they de-energize the circuits, so then you don't have power to things that you may need from an emergency generator standpoint. So you have a cascade of those issues as well. So you had reservoirs, pump stations, you have customer service mains, laterals that were, in PVC. And even in now when you look at that, because that's a lot of the after the fact, like what is the assessment of this? how hot did it get? What is the impact, and what can you still utilize, or what do you have to replace?
Right.
So a lot of that clearing after the event's over, clearing of things and assessing the systems from the standpoint of, are they impacted? There's water testing that goes on to identify it. There's been analysis to show, like, even if things didn't fully melt, if in the vicinity heat of things getting so hot, you could have other things that may have imparted some different constituents, where then it renders part of your system unusable. Everything from meters to the mains and the laterals and such, because you have a myriad of different materials that are in these systems that have been operating for many decades.
And I think something that people really don't realize in Southern California, some of your water infrastructure is above ground, whether it be meters or backflow or any of those things, which the fire's ripping right past. So
Right.
you're now having, you have now pipes that have either melted or deteriorated to the point where you're now going through service by service and having to change stuff out.
Correct.
So, you had mentioned it. The media made a lot about the hydrants running dry. But to your point, you guys, your draw on your system was just so exponential. There's no way anybody could have prepared for that. Is there anything that you guys moving forward are saying this was the worst case, or is this something you have to start planning for?
So Metropolitan itself we didn't have impacted facilities, so that enabled us to help and assist our member agencies. So the member agencies we had involved, direct customers for Metropolitan are Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and the Foothill Municipal Water District, which serves a lot of those retailers above the Pasadena area. So we do emergency preparedness exercises. As Metropolitan, we do multiple exercises during the year. We invite our member agencies in. We have a lot of different scenarios that we go through. Everything from fires, floods, earthquakes, landslides, which we're prone to.
Yeah.
And there's even some like tornadoes here and there, which is kind of odd now on the West Coast, but we have some of those. So we try to put up different scenarios and different injects into these exercises that can formulate and prepare us for the unexpected, right? But when you come to extremes of the power lines being de-energized for such a period of time, what can you do? There's certain things that you think about. So you build off, and there's lessons learned collectively. But one thing we did find too, in the aspect of in this large 6-county area of Southern California, everyone has their own type of mapping systems and communications. And while everyone working under the realm of the drinking water permits, they can issue their own types of notices,
Right.
but they can't lift them. They need the regulator to help do that. Everybody issued different types. It wasn't like they all issued the same thing. So when you talk about communication and the clarity, so homogenizing a lot of that in the exercises. There's a lot of great mapping systems out there, but we're maybe not all interconnected. So we're learning about how to integrate on a common platform to ensure that we can get clarity of messages out to the customer, the news, and the media, et cetera, when there are very, very large instances like this.
Switching it up just a little bit, you had talked about sustainable source in the future. I had never heard of the pure water, but if you could just touch on it for a couple minutes, I think it's so cool because all growing up, we always heard drought, 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 and the fact that you guys are working on something sustainable for the future is amazing, and I think people just need to hear about it.
Sure. So I mentioned Metropolitan having 2 main supplies of water. It's not 2 that's our only portfolio of water. And we used to have not a lot of drought on those 2 supplies, and we were looking at one supply might have a drought, the other one may not. But what we have found over the past couple of decades is there's more and more drought in variable times, and we found ourselves early in the turn of probably right when the pandemic came around, both of our supplies ended up in drought, and we were in an extreme drought for 4 years. And it came to the point where we had to we were not getting the water that we were allocated rights to, so we were curtailed on our state water contract percentage and also on the Colorado River. But then in the portfolio of other things that we turn to, we have exchanges with other water purveyors and contractors where they would keep water and give their water to us. So we have a lot of these institutional agreements and exchanges that go on. Right. That's another aspect of planning. because our planning goes out 40 to 50 years.
Right.
And then you have a more immediate time in the 5-year realm where you're moving water around and putting it into storage. So we have a storage plan, we have groundwater banking plans and partners in there to put water in when we have times that we can redirect and store water. So that's part of that. But then the other part of looking at sustainable water solutions is looking at reuse. There's a lot of reuse done in Southern California from the standpoint of conservation, exchanging the water from watering your lawns, watering landscaping,
Right.
Industrial uses. So recycle water for those uses and not using the potable water. Conservation campaigns, water efficiency devices. So all of that to kind of look at reducing the overall demand.
Right.
So that goes together in the portfolio. So then the last, building on the last untapped supply, our partner, Wastewater Agency, Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts, they have a terminal plant kind of near around LAX in Carson. That's the most recognized landmark. That's
Right.
why I say that. That they were putting the discharge to the ocean. So we were looking, and I talks with them, and we have agreements with them of tapping their 400 MGD of discharge and reclaiming that water, running it through advanced treatment processes that are under the regulations allowed by the state
Right.
of California, and utilizing that for groundwater recharge, or putting it up to the headworks of our treatment plants, or even, we're not there yet, but we're working on, looking at the aspect of actually putting that into the treated water pipeline.
Oh, wow.
That's called direct potable
Right.
reuse. So, why are we doing this? You need to make sure we have groundwater aquifer sustainability for those that are the groundwater producers to help balance the full supplies of these portfolios. You're looking at surface supplies, you're looking at groundwater. We do have some desalination on the West Coast. It's very environmentally intrusive from the standpoint of the rigor and the permitting that is needed to do those, very energy intensive too. So looking at Pure Water Southern California, and that's the coined name, it's the branded name.
Right.
Many of the water purveyors that are involved with these plants in Southern California, or actually in the coast of California, their monitoring name now is Pure Water.
Nice.
So we have Pure Water Southern California. Our member agency, LADWP, has Pure Water Los Angeles. There's Pure Water San Diego. So there's to
a
help
movement.
to get recognition so that
Right.
people know what it is. We're not all calling it something different.
Awesome.
And so it's a drought sustainable supply in the aspect of what I mentioned being west of the San Andreas Fault. If the San Andreas Fault, we know we're known for
Right.
earthquakes there,
Right.
but if that were to happen, we not only have water storage, we have storage for 6 months supply in Southern California with some of our storage programs that we do have as Metropolitan.
That's awesome.
But then we also have the connectivity and the capability of this pure water supply to help get us water where our other two legs of the stool, those other two surface supplies, may experience an interruption.
Awesome.
So looking for that full
The full-
resilient portfolio that, you can spin the wheel and you can draw from different sources at different times depending on what's going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I've learned a ton. I know our listeners will have learned a ton. For our entire team here at Baxter Woodman, I want to thank you, Heather, and for all of our listeners, thank you for listening today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.